but I look at a lot of work that people do, and you always form your own opinion about stuff. And what I'm going to do tonight is try to share some stuff with you that I've learned over the years, and I've been turning for like 25 years. And one of the things I did early on was pursue professional assistance, to learn how to do this. And cumulatively, I spent about just over 6 months in wood turning schools. And those are times that you can actually dedicate your attention, for a full week, every day, all day long, for in the presence of a professional instructor, and you can take home a lot. You can take home more than you can fathom. When you show up, and you find out that, gosh, I didn't know that, and I didn't know that, and I didn't know that, and maybe I can remember half of it when I come home. Um, but it's something I really encourage. I used to play golf a little bit, and I was never very good, but I would have a problem, and then my buddies, standing on the tee, oh, do this, oh, put your foot this way, oh, put your hands that way, your butt's not sticking out far enough, and you do all these things, you're still hitting the ball in the woods, Then you go to your club professional, and he gets a bucket of balls out, and you hit about a third of them, and he goes, "If you feel better now?" It's straightened you out. And that lasts for a week or two before you start going back to your old habits. But I do encourage getting involved in. If you're that interested in wood turning, you should look into some of the schools and select your class by the subject matter that you're interested in. Would be my first thing to do and or recommend. And then the second thing is if you have a known professional that is highly regarded in the field, select it that way. Because people so often, they go, well, I want to go on a vacation. Well, this is so and so's only teaching, or this was a subject I took, but wasn't interested in it. Or you just spent $1,000, $1,500 on a class that you really shouldn't have taken. So should have gone playing golf with your wife. Um, so I don't have my clicker. I'm going to run through some slides really quickly. I don't want to. I would rather be turning. I have this thing, and if I'm not turning in 15 minutes, I'm going to disappoint the group. Um, so this is your club. I'm concentrating on a little list again of 2025 demonstrations. This one tonight, I just pulled a name out of the hat and just called it Bowl Design Considerations. This was my very first bowl that I ever turned. And Ed's laughing himself off the chair over here. But when I started to get interested in wood turning, it was because I went to art shows and I started seeing these bowls that were basically elliptical, and I couldn't understand how they were doing it. And I had one artist, cornered one day, and he goes on and on. He goes, oh, yeah, you take a limb of wood and you do this and you do that. And then I was like, so I bought a lathe, and there was a pecan tree out near my lake place, and I took that home and managed to scrape it out. I broke some tools, bent some tools. I broke a tool rest and everything. But after 2 weeks of fiddling with it, I finally got a bowl. But one of the things I recognized right away is that the base is the same diameter as my 6-inch tool faceplate, because I didn't know what to do about it. So tonight I'm going to give you some tips on how to get away from that. But what did I do? But this is what I migrated to over time, learning more from different people. And these particular bowls are part of a project that I worked together with Bob Stoker down in St. Augustine, and he had an order for 35 bowls or something like that, where they were going to Japan and China as a corporate gift, and he invited me to come because he didn't have enough bowls. I said, well, I can't make up half of them yet, but I can do it the next 2 weeks, you know. So this was this stuff that was destined for that. So, but what I like about this type of shape is that it is, as Mark asked me to do, it's the blank is longer than it is wide. So I make that oval that I was so mystified with when I met with the artist at the art show. And tonight I'll explain that to you. You're in my process, you know, of turning bowls. It starts from the day that I find a log somewhere, and I decide whether it's a good candidate for a type of work that I want to do and what I want to get out of it. And really, what I'm after is a cylindrically shaped log like a telephone pole, and the pith reasonably close to the center. It doesn't have to be perfect because I can adjust for that. And when I cut blanks in the field, I cut them twice the diameter of the log, and I'm going to take the choice pieces out of the middle of it. I'm going to throw away the ends. So like on the stuff one I'm going to turn tonight, this is one of the two ends of what I cut off. So this stuff just goes into the waste pile. But what my idea behind that is that it's a green piece of wood. It's drying rapidly on either end, no matter what I do. And I want to get the choice cut out of the middle. I can afford to do that because I don't buy wood. I don't buy wood. Seldom have I ever done that. Right, Paula? Yeah. She's a wood supplier and a dear friend. I go over there and I'm like, I don't want to buy any wood. Don't you have anything for free? Yeah. But yeah. But I started getting desperate because it's really hard for me to find the wood that I want. The cylindrically shaped green piece of wood with a pith reasonably close to the center. I observed some of the bowls over here, and one of the things that I found, you know, just looking around, it's not uncommon, is that the pith line is off center on a lot of them. You see that all over the place. It's not a big deal. But what happens when the pith's off center is that the piece is now, as it dries, is going to be have an uneven stress on it as it starts drying. So instead of being nice and symmetrical like this with the pith down the center of the bowl, the pith's off to the center and it's more like this. And it's trying to dry, and it's going to dry and start putting so much force on one side of that bowl that it's going to increase the chances that it's going to crack. And I adhere to that whether it's a smooth edge bowl or a natural edge bowl. I was fortunate that I spent 2 weeks with Al Sturt, who is world famous for the way that he positions wood on the lathe. And a lot of his work is smooth edge bowls. And so you see quite a different grain pattern than you do when you're doing a natural edge bowl. I've got some drawings in here that you will be able to see, and I'm going to pass a book. Well, Mark's got the book. Where'd it go? Okay. I can't distribute that particular set of drawings because they're copyrighted. I have permission to use them for demos and for teaching, but I don't have permission to distribute them. But I'm going to send it around, and you might choose to, if it's of interest to you, you might choose to buy the book. So this is a cross-cutting a blank from a smooth edge bowl, or for 4 smooth edge bowls. And here's where I'm talking about taking the waste stock off of either side. And whatever that diameter is here is going to be the length of my cuts, okay? So I'm going to go 1 to 1, okay? And if I'm going to do a natural edge bowl in a situation where I want the oval, you know, elliptical shape, then the blank needs to be longer than the diameter of the wood. So basically what we've got here is whatever that diameter is, I would typically multiply that by 1.25 and cut here and cut here. And as you'll see in a few minutes, as I process that, the blank is actually longer than it is wide. And so when I put it on the bandsaw, I'm just trimming off the corners on either end. I'm not making a circle out of it because that would defeat the purpose, okay? And then what I do too is I've experimented, and I brought some of these experiments with me, is that we're going up, I'll go up to about 1.5 in total length. The problem is as you start getting further and further out, the bowl gets lower and lower on the edge, and it becomes more and more of like a longer propeller than you would at 1.25. But it's something you can play with, and maybe depending on the blank itself, you might, wow, I'm going to try this. I want to try it at 1.0, 1.25, and 1.5 and see what happens. And that way you then, with your own experiment, be able to determine what is appealing to you. Or if you get in a certain situation, somebody says, I want one of those really long banana-looking bowls, well, you know how to do it. So here's what we're talking about is that, let's say you got a log diameter, and this is a 1-to-1. So that could be a smooth edge bowl or a short natural edge bowl. This is 1.25 to 1, and this is 1.5 to 1. And I brought examples of bowls for you to look at that will show you what that means. Okay. So we've got a natural edge bowl, which was was made out of a circle of wood. It was the circle was, the wood was cut 1-to-1. So whatever the diameter of the log was is the length of this. Well, since it was 1-to-1, it's a circle, right? A true circle. So then I took the other half of that piece and produced a 7.5-inch bowl, 1-to-1. So these two can be made out of a round blank. Then here's another 1.0. This is a 1 to 1.25. You can see the difference because this was an oval. And here's a 1.5. And these were all taken out of logs that were identical in diameter. Okay? So you've got a 1.1, a 1.25, and a 1.5. So you can see, I marked these so that you can see, but each one of these are the same size wood to start with. Sir?
I said there's never any tool.
Oh, the tool marks. I sold them.
My big bad.
No, the tool marks are a different issue. Let's put this. So here's looking down on the blank. So let's say that this is the bark side. And so we've got the length and diameter the same for the 1.1 to 1. Here's the elongated one somewhat, which is 1.25. And here's the 1.5. On a natural edge bowl blank, you're going to save in the middle, but these bumper spikes that are on a chainsaw, you can go ahead and, if you don't position those outboard of your cut away from the choice piece, then you can damage the bark with it. So if you have any intention of retaining the bark on the project, make sure that you cut with the chainsaw on one side with the bumper spikes outside the line, and then go to the other side of the bowl and cut from the other side so that you don't knock that bark off. And even if there is no bark or whatever, you're going to end up with this line where the bumper spikes were damaging the wood, whether you're trying to save the bark or not. The wood I'm working with tonight is this river birch, and very uneventful white plain blank, plain wood. And this is a layout that I was doing with it. So what I did was I decided that the bark was unacceptable to stay on the piece, and I really didn't like the way that it looked. And so I put it between centers and turned it into a column or a cylinder so that the piece has no bark or any irregularities in the surface. So when I make a natural edge bowl out of this, I call it the unnatural edge bowl because it's not a natural surface. But the one that I sent around a while ago that had the color on it, basically what I did is I pre-painted that surface so that one, you guys could see it. You can see the wood instead of looking at something that's pure white up here. And then the edge would retain the color, hopefully. And it also gives the turner a little better view of where they're entering in at the lip of the bowl. So if it's just pure white, it's really kind of hard to see. And so I painted it, and you can see the painted edge that stayed on that. It stayed reasonably well. Let's see what I got left. Okay, here's Todd Hoyer's drawings. I'm not going to explain these to you tonight. I've passed the book around. If you're interested, you can buy the book. Maybe find it at your library. But you can see he did extensive effort, made extensive effort in producing these drawings. I would refer to them a lot. Okay, let's turn. I will skip over this a little bit right now. If we got time later, we can go over it. In a natural edge bowl, what I'm looking for is, first of all, the outside shape. You've got an outside shape like this that has a continuous curve from one wing to the opposite wing, and it continues just like this, and it's not interrupted by where your chuck was holding the piece or your faceplate was holding the piece. And so what I do generally is put a fairly small foot on the bottom. These are non-functional pieces, so that it'll rest there, and it elevates, that little foot elevates the piece up. You can also, if you wanted to, you can make that bottom completely round with what I'll show you tonight. But I want a consistent wall thickness from here all the way down, and a good way to detect that, at least to this point, is to look at the width of the edge all the way around, and be very, very critical on yourself about are there any variations there? Because if this is thinner looking here than it is here, that's because right in that line you're too thin, or I say too thin, you're thinner than this. The other thing is positioning. I don't know where we're at here. Positioning the piece so that the growth rings originate in the center of the piece and make their way up to the sides. So those are just some of the things I like to look at in a bowl. And a continuous curve to me is much more appealing to me personally than a flat. And I also don't like for a long time, I had a real problem with getting a bulge right here, and then it'd go up. Well, I was like, I don't know how to fix this. And I finally figured out how to do it, and I was about ready to just run around in the yard and scream and holler because I was so happy. But I don't have that problem anymore.
Can you explain at some point how you align that wood to get the wood rings perfectly situated at the bottom? When did you do that in your process?
Basically, he's asking about the process to align the wood on the pith. Is that correct?
Aligning those growth rings on the bottom.
Right, that's what I would say, because the pith line is right here. You see where that is all centered up right here, because that's where the tree center was right here. And the way you do that, since you asked, is when your log is in an integral form, you look where the pith is. You take out a magic marker or something and mark the pith. And I think I mentioned earlier, I like to find wood that has a pith reasonably close to the center. It doesn't have to be perfect. Because in Florida, our trees lean a lot. And so I find a point where that is, and then I take a ruler and I measure from here to here and here to here so that I find a point where it's equidistant from the pith to the edges on both sides. Now, if I keep checking it, I'll eventually find a point where that's true. And then the next thing I do is I look at what I call the crown of the piece to see if it's suitable for the shape that I want for the valleys. Okay, because the valleys I can't really do anything about. It's out of my control. So I'm looking for something that's perfect here. Tonight we've got what I call an unnatural log blank, and they should be in very good shape. But so I say, okay, well, we've got this line now because we found a place for the piths in the middle, and then I like the crown because I'm going to cut that piece in half, and I'm going to end up with two halves. And then once that's done, I've got a blank like this, okay? You see those marks that are on there? So here's half the log. This is the pith line. I go ahead and identify that pith at both ends, okay? Found it here and here. I lay a ruler there, and I make a little line, and I make a cross line halfway between those 2 points. Then when I mark it here and here, here and here. Then I set it down and take usually a carpenter's square or something like that, and I mark up here where the pith is, and then I mark up here. Incidentally, when you make these cuts, they need to be very perpendicular to this surface, because if they're at an angle, it throws this all off. Okay, so pay attention to what you're doing with a chainsaw. So then you look here, you mark here, you look here, you mark here, you measure in between here, make a mark, and at 50% of the distance here, the length. And so theoretically, this and this should be directly opposite of each other. Okay? Any questions about that? Okay, so when I mount it on the lathe, I've already got an advantage of having a cross mark here and a dot here. Okay? But I go another step before I go to the lathe. What kind of blank is that? Natural edge blank, because it's longer than it is wide. This could be a natural edge or a smooth edge bowl. Okay? So when I'm going to do the natural edge bowl, which I think is what you're asking about, is whatever that length is there is going to be the diameter of my circle that I put on here. But when I cut on the bandsaw, if I follow that line, it only takes the corners off. So basically, it's not a good example, but it's kind of an elliptical result. Okay? It could be an elliptical result if you want to do an elliptical disc. It's really not worth the time. I've tried it. It's not worth the time. So I've chosen the natural edge bowl with an elliptical result after I cut it. Next thing I do is drill a hole in the bark side. This brown is supposed to be bark. I like that. I made that up. I patented that. Hey, how you been, Craig? So I drill a hole through the cambium layer, the bark in the cambium layer, at the point is the center of where I've marked it here. So I've got a firm position or a firm place to put my drive spur. And when I make that hole, I make it bigger than the drive spur. Okay, don't make it the diameter of your drive spur, and don't take your drive spur and drive it in with a hammer, because that is a point that you may want to adjust. And if your hole's too small, you got no room for adjustment, And if you've driven it into the wood, you just really kind of wasted the effort. So then I can put that dead centered in that hole. I can bring my tailstock up on that cross line. And in a natural edge bowl, you start with the bark to your left. You start with the foot to your right. Okay? If you're doing a smooth edge bowl, I would lay it out, I'd use the other blank, the round blank. If I was doing a smooth edge bowl, I would generally put the cut side to the left and the rounded side to the right. It's still my foot and the rim. Okay? Any questions about that up to this point? Okay.
I guess the key to that is don't get pissed off.
I'm sorry?
I guess the key to that is don't get pissed off.
But in doing that on the natural edge bowl, then I could end up being able to turn the outside of this piece and do the foot. Do the tenon, do the what I call a base step, and the outside of the piece up to here. Get it in completely good condition, ready to turn around. Take this off, put it on the chuck. You go this way, retrue it, and we'll go over that when I turn this next piece. We'll retrue this piece and then hollow it. This bowl went through exactly the same process I used for every one of my natural edge bowls. It's cut 1.25 to 1. It's been, everything was, the pith was identified and centered on the piece. Everything I did is the same as I would do with a really nice bowl. I turned, 15 of these things in December a while back. And every one of them was the same amount of effort in terms of, and the same process. Questions? Well, this is great. I'm either hitting them all or I lost them.
Everything that you've done there is really predicated on a cylindrical log.
On the what?
On your log being very cylindrical.
That is a big help. And let me tell you why. When you have a non-cylindrical log, let's say it's got a hump on it. When you've got that nice cut, and I said, look at the crown. If I've got a hump there, it's going to affect something I can have no control over, and that is where the valleys fall. Okay, so the big bowl that I have here, the reason those valleys look so good was not my fault, not caused by me. That was caused by God. And I happened to get one that this valley is now probably the same distance to the table on both sides. And it's because I picked out something that had a really nice crown to it. And I had the pith lined up in the middle. If I have a slide that's beyond the ones I was going to show you tonight, but I show one that's got a perfect crown, and I showed one that's got a big lumpy. And there's really no way I've ever found, or anybody I've ever heard that said you can fix that. I used to think that I could adjust this way. It doesn't work.
That's what I tried to do. I tried to tilt it and just try to get it so that the two edges, with your thumb, when they go against something, and it's still either the edges are like this or the sides are like this.
Yeah. Well, look for a good crown. And in fact, what you could do is if you get a piece that'll work for you, you can do that. If you've got one that's lumpy, you don't like the shape of the crown, put it between the centers on the pith if you can. Find something that's pith fairly close. That's what I did here. And turn it into a cylinder. Now, after doing that, then start laying it out, bifurcating it into two halves, doing the layout process that I just showed you, and you'll have that perfect valley. No, valleys, I guess, yes. I like that you're that interested in it. Thank you. Anything else? I know y'all want me to turn. Oh, heck. I guess I'll turn. We can send this one around if you want. Actually, two of them. This is when I take the lots and lots of demos. It's a Survivor, that big bowl. And it's nice when you hold it up, they can see it, you know. It's always the fun part, you know. I get to turn, y'all get to watch.
How much clearance do you leave between the top of the pit and the bottom of your blank?
Half an inch.
That's it.
You're-
You don't
you're-
have enough.
So, well, you're actually, sometimes when I cut it, I actually cut it so the pith is right here, because that's going to be waste wood anyway. But I think what you're asking is it here or is it here? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, because there's always some distortion for some distance around the pit. And
Yeah.
particularly when you have a small foot. You know, can it make it so that
The foot, most of the ones that I turn, the foot is within the base step and not in the tenon. So where the tenon's holding on, if the wood looks good, you don't want to grab where the pith is and have it split on you. But I don't know if you use a base step, but it was a godsend for me, and I'll go over that tonight, I hope. So, but the base step buys you a lot this way. So what I did was totally painted this piece so that you can see as I remove material better. And then again, like I mentioned before, I'll have a line, a painted line to look at when I'm trying to see down on the rim. Sometimes you're like, what can I put behind here to give a contrast to help me? So center the drive spur on that end where I drilled that hole. I try to hit the cross mark here. And I don't over tighten it at this point. That's the base step. We'll go over that later. I'd like to get turning. We're still good on sound? Okay.
Can you achieve, right now, because you've got the geometric center, okay, it should turn smooth. But in some cases, you got a hole in one, or you got something, you got gaps, right? It's not gonna, you're gonna have to wobble. With that piece, as uniform as it is, you turn that on, you should have no wobble, because you got the geometric center that agrees with its weight.
But, I mean, it'll be close, but we're going to adjust the wing tips now. At this stage, the first thing I do is adjust the wing tips. Because the wing tips, even though I went to, meticulously marked here and everything and got it all just right. And a lot of times it's with a natural edge blank. A lot of times it's thicker here than it is here. And so what my goal is to get this to be the same as that. And that's what I'm going to use that line for on the flat side, is I'm going to adjust up and down this way and bring that exactly where I want it. If I didn't have that line to follow, I could get off the pith line. And that's not what I want to do. The way I do that, it's so much fun getting used to a different lathe all the time. Do we have an overhead on that? Do we have an overhead? Very close. I rest my thumb. Can you see my thumb? Why don't you? There you go. See where my thumb is and my thumbnail? I'm resting it on the tool rest so it's stable. Now just touch the edge there. I come here and it's hella heavy. Okay, this is sticking out that far, too far. This is real important. Take your thumb, put it underneath the snout of the drive spur and against the wood. Spread your fingers out, loosen this, and adjust it up that line just a little bit. The reason my thumb is there, because it's controlling that piece and keeping it from flipping like that. If you just push your hand like this, you're going to be all over the place. But if you stabilize the piece with your thumb under here, can y'all see that? Then I can loosen here, adjust it in the direction I need to, then tighten it back up. It's hitting a little bit right there. Oh, and
So the part you're putting at the top, that's the part that was hitting the thumb too much?
yes, it needs to go that way. The other important thing here is I do not have the point in the live center. It's still just the little cup, little edge on there. Y'all can pass this around. I'll need it back, but I need it back for the demo. But this is the one-way live center, and the robust live center have an identical design at the end. And so it's a sharp little ring. And if you have a point in there and you try to make that minor adjustment, it can go into that hole and it just puts it right back where it was. And so with a little ring there, and it's sharp on the edge, they cut a circle, or you can cut a circle, you can cut a circle, and they can be, you know, very, very, very close to each other, but they don't force the piece to move. But the robust is a very good one, as well as the one-way. I have both.
Ron,
Sure.
how much tolerance do you have on that adjustment, that feel that you're making everything thumb? You talking
Where are you-
about a 16th of an inch, or?
Yeah, but it doesn't matter a whole lot. I mean, when you look at the natural edge bowl, you have this undulating edge like this. How am I going to stand there and detect a 16th of an inch? I mean, it could be off by an eighth of an inch, and I probably wouldn't know. I know wood turners, so they'll sneak a ruler around it. You know, I've done it myself. How would I know that? But so let's call it that it's centered up. Any questions at this point before I continue? Tighten the heck out of stuff, you know. You might notice that I'm using a really large drive spur. Joel just bought one that's very similar. So I usually start by first making sure I'm at 0. You never want to turn the lathe on from the beginning with it possibly up in a high speed, and which when I walked in here today, it was on high speed, the maximum. You want to make sure what you're doing to operate it is okay. I got that going. I found out where the lock is for the spindle, and what I should be able to do is control this thing like that. Now, if you can buy a lathe with a remote control or one that has controls over here, do it. Because I have to cross the line of fire to make any adjustments to this, and it's a dangerous thing for me. At this stage right here, I don't know the integrity of the wood. I don't know how things are going to work out. I would usually be at my lathe with a remote control and going, and I'm like, oh, I better go back and retighten something, or I may reposition it, or whatever. So think about that when you look for a machine. Face shields, ultimately important. Miss Paula back here at the table supplies this this face shield, which is one of the best ones on the market. You can pop this out and clean it. I did it today. If you get hit, you know, I've been hit by chunks of wood and bark and everything else, and so far I haven't had to have any reconstructive surgery. And I know that as a senior, I don't have any dental insurance, so I kind of stay away and protect myself best I can. But Paula sells them, and it'd be a very worthwhile investment. You go with those real cheap ones that you buy that's got nothing down here, and you know, you might as well not wear anything. So, so this is working out pretty well. I've got, if you notice, the position of my tool rest is about 45 degrees to this plane, approximately 45 degrees. The height of the tool rest is set to position the cutting edge of my tool at center when the tool handle's level. I'm just a little bit high. If you put your fingers on the tool, remember how I did this with my thumb a while ago about stabilizing? I put my fingers on the tool rest before I loosen it, on the shaft of the tool rest. And now I can ease it up or down a little bit and be in control. If I'm holding up here, it's going to go, you know, it's just not a good thing. So that's better. Whether this was a smooth edge bowl with a round blank, or it's a natural edge bowl with let's call it elliptical. It's not truly elliptical yet, but you don't come out here and start doing this. Okay, don't turn it into a cylinder, especially on this one. You don't want to do that. Why'd you cut it to 1.25 if you're going to turn it into a cylinder? But if you have a cylindrical, you know, a round piece, don't come up here and just do this, because what's going to happen is it's going to fray what we call the end grain that's coming around here. It's going to fray it up here and here, and you're going to want to turn it into a bowl anyway. So why turn it into a cylinder? So what I do is I always say I want to start making a bowl from the beginning. So I've got got something we need to experiment with tonight. Harold, the little genius guy over there, has actually got the microphone working. Made this for me. Is this the direction it needs to be? Yeah. So it's a gauge for setting the diameter of the tenon for the chuck. And you'll see me use this for the first time ever by resting it on here and making a line by putting a pencil into this hole. So it's the specific distance you need for the tenon that I need for my particular chuck. You would need either multiple holes or multiples of these. You know, I've got 9 chucks and a whole bunch of, I got a box full of jaws, so who knows? I don't even know what some of them go to. But so anyway, I'm going to try that out tonight. If it doesn't pan out, I have where did my chuck go? There it is. Rattlesnake. I've got my old version that I use. Set it here, set it here. So we'll see what happens. But before we get there, I'm going to go ahead and take a little wood off. Ooh. Tight, 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 tight. I don't know how to tighten that. So I'm going to go in the direction this way. Let's see what happens. See if I can do this without killing myself. He gets like, he was laughing when he gave it to me. He's like, let's see what he does with this. Ta-da! And I'm going to compare it to mine. Yeah, close. I guess you did it right. I have a lot of fun communicating with Harold and some of the others that are in here. I have a magnet in my pencil. People get a kick out of that. I mean, when you're in this business, spend 10 minutes looking for your pencils, probably not good. Did you notice how calm the lathe's operating? It may be because, like you said, you're more centered. Looking for his little doodad. Put it in this way. But see, the live center is kind of in the way. What if we put it in this way? So it's with the back facing up. Okay. I got you. Now this chuck that I have is a one-way talon that's got parallel serrated jaws, so there's no need to put a dovetail on it. I think Harold incorporated a dovetail angle on the ones that do need that. So we don't want to be too long with this, which I'm a hair too long. And the reason why is because you don't want this portion of the tenon to rest in the bottom of your jaws. What happened? What happened? Okay. So this portion of your tenon should not rest on the bottom of your jaws. In order to get a maximum stability, your ends of your jaws need to be resting here with a small gap here. Okay. When I make my own gauges like this, I lay a penny or a dime down in the bottom of my jaws with the chuck facing upward, and then I make a measurement down to that, so that when I make this, he made the other one, then you don't want it to be so long that it's resting on the bottom. Your chuck will almost always let go of it if you get it resting on the bottom like that. I didn't know that for the first 5 years I turned. Actually, what happened to me was I was taught to use face plates, and that's all I used for 10 years. I didn't use a chuck. And somebody gave me a chuck. I went, okay. And I learned how to use them. If you use them right, they're good. When you create your tenon, whether it's a dovetail or a parallel system. You can take a little spindle gouge, it's a convex bevel detail spindle gouge to sharpen by hand. Can they see that? Okay. But it's got a convex bevel on it instead of a hologram. And it's very, very sharp on the edges. And you can reach in and clean up that little union where this tenon reaches this surface here. And because if you have a radius there that's caused by the end of your big gouge, then as you tighten your jaws up on it, it's going to push the wood away from the ends of the jaws. So it's best to go ahead and clean that up now. Sorry. Good time to do that. Okay. And I need to shorten that tenon up just a little bit. Just a little push cut in there. Now I've got the gap that I was looking for. So now if I went ahead and turned the bowl and I went from, say, where the outside of the jaws are going to be and started turning that bowl, I'm really kind of stuck with the tenon as my foot, or I take the tenon off. But what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to show you how to do the base step and get away from it. Okay. That gives me a little bit of a base step. Notice I've still got a big lip here coming out. I need to address that. Why did I stop when I came up to here? The reason why is because if I continue to bring this up to here, it's going to fray that fiber out here that's not got anything to support it. So if I,
Mike has got farther away from the mouth.
oh, okay. Sorry. How's that? Better? But so if I continue to come in this direction, when it gets here, just going to lift that off. And if we got bark in particular and you were trying to save it, it's not going to work out too well. So what I'll do is make a backwards cut, going back the other way. This is going to be a real shallow bowl, so. Even compressing that edge, we're getting some fray, which is one way to correct for that. So she'll never notice that they're gone. You know, at our house, she's a notes all over. Says cloth only, do not touch. Things like that. But if you don't trim it off, it just keeps getting worse. I pride myself in being an incessant sharpener, resharpener. So you find the edge, back up, find the edge. Notice how I'm bringing the handle around to maintain creating a curve. Find the edge. Let me explain that cut. I just want to go ahead and do it. Sometimes I think I'm ready to do it. I don't want to talk about it. I want to do it. But you might notice that I dropped the handle way down instead of being horizontal and pushing the cut. I put it this way. I put it on my left thigh. I put my thumb like that, my finger like this, and I push into the tool rest, not into the wood. If you try to push into the wood and you've got this interrupted edge, and it's going to push in there and bounce, maybe worse. So you drop that down, and it'll give you a lot cleaner cut. This wood not going to give us a real good clean cut anyway, but but if you'll notice, I'm trying to still maintain a curve and trying to make that curve like I was describing earlier. A way to test for your curve, Don Duden over in Tallahassee, formerly in Cedar Keys. Okay. But Don Duden taught me to do this. And you basically roll that ruler. And if you find a place where it hesitates, you've got a ditch. Okay, so it's resting on 2 points. And if you find a place that's doing that, then put your tool rest over here. Put 2 little tiny pieces of tape exactly where those points are. Just a little, pull off a little point off your blue tape or something and identify that area on the tool rest, not on the piece, because when you turn the lathe on, you're not going to be able to see it on the piece. And then you work left and right of that as maintaining a border. They're maintaining a border. Because if I keep digging in the ditch doesn't go away. if I work above and, I mean, to the right and to the left of the ditch, I can now bring everything so that it's the same level. Any questions about that? But this little test here will tell you, like, what actually I've got, what I see is it's a little flat right there. It stopped. It should roll. So to fix that, what I would do is kind of work here and to here just a little bit to get it to where it would roll. But this is the base step here, y'all on that shot. So this is the tenon. The jaws are resting here. This is the diameter of this step here is just outside the width of the jaws, you know, the outer width. And then it comes in 3/8 of an inch, have a 1/2 an inch or something. And then you start your curve at that point right there. So your, you don't start the curve at the ends of your jaws. You start the curve at the beginning edge of the base step.
So on the depth of that base step, you said 1/8 to 1/2 inch or 3/8 to 1/2 inch. Is it always that, or does it depend on the shape? Are you trying to get that curve to come down and hit a certain spot below you?
What I'm doing is I'm projecting the line, extrapolating the line of the curve to go to where I want a foot. And it's going to take, I'm going to take off a lot of that base step, probably all the tenon. And that's how I get those teeny tiny feet on my pieces. And that's how I get to where I don't have to have a foot at all. It could just be a curve. Some of the hollow forms that I do have no foot whatsoever, or I did one a while back, and the foot was a tiny, tiny indentation you could hardly detect. It was about half the size of a dime, but it rested on it. Which was done all because of the base step. So this line right here is what I want to extrapolate, and my foot's going to be back in here somewhere. Okay? The foot's not here, and the foot's not here. I could just keep that line going and end up with no foot whatsoever. Okay?
So if you take it, you continue the projection of the angle through the base step, and wherever it hits on the tenon, that will be the size of your foot?
No. I'm taking everything off I don't want. So I can, I guess the best way to say this would be that I can have any size foot that I want from here to nothing. Okay? And when I hollow the piece, I found that with the typical curve that I make, and I test the inside depth of that bowl, I want that inside depth mark to be right here.
At the top of it?
That's the inside surface of the bowl, so that as I keep going, I've got plenty of meat so I don't go through the bowl, and I've got enough to make a foot with. Okay? You'll see, I hope. Oh yeah. We got lots of time. I always say that and then I don't. This comes with fiber. I've been drinking coconut water. I don't know why. I like more than girls. I don't know. If I had the time, and this surface was rough like it is right now, and that's because where the end grain's coming this way, what I would typically do is I would take a water spritzer, put something under here and put something over it, leave and go do something else for a little while, go sharpen or whatever, and then come back, and what it'll do is soften and swell those fibers and make them easier to take off and smoother. The other choice is mineral oil. Mineral oil does a very nice job of it, probably better than water. And but yeah, the mineral oil doesn't take as long to condition the fibers. But you'll be surprised, it's like as smooth as can be after you do that, after you cut, a nice cut on it. So keep that in mind as a little tip you can take home. I'm going to address this just a tiny bit, and then we'll move on. Okay. And I don't go crazy about producing a very smooth surface at this point. I would not go to the water or the mineral oil at this point, because when I turn it around, I've got to readjust the outside anyway, because it's not going to be concentric the way it's remounted. You ever notice how you get a thin side and a thick side on a bowl? It's because you didn't recenter it when you turned it around. So why expend a lot of time and energy trying to make it perfect now, because I'm going to have to go over that surface again. All right, so I think that I can't keep up with Harold's doodad. Yeah, 10 is a hair big, which is okay. The depth on it is good. I got plenty of gap, and I've cleaned the corner out. Cleaning that corner out is critically important. So I think we can take this off. So we got our tenon, base step, surface turned up to the tips of the wings. It's always fun on a different lathe. You got any tips?
Push the button on the front of the machine, red button. No, you push it and hold it.
This?
Not underneath the rheostat, it's got some things on it, flat
Little flat button.
on the front.
Somebody show me what I'm doing wrong.
Oh, your belly button.
Oh, this locked it earlier. Maybe that's the indexer or something. Okay, thank you. So this is half my wrench. I used to really be able to impress them with a big wrench, but when I made my new box, it's got all the stuff in it that I use when I'm turning, pretty much. That wouldn't fit. So I said, well, is there any reason I need it to be this long? I don't know. Between that and my weightlifting gloves, you can do impress a lot of people. Made this box. And I'm watching already for gaps where the jaws are resting on the wood. And so far I see none. If it was tiny, and I'm pretty sure I had the right length of tenon and I've cleaned out that little corner, I'd probably use my tailstock to push against it, you know, while it's tightening. But for the benefit of the people up here in the cheap seats, I'm going to tighten this. Well, I like my lathe's got a hole right here that I put my tool, my chuck key in. Did I get my live center back?
Right there on the
Okay, thank you. I won't need it yet, but this is my own pen that I made. I'll explain that later. Okay. So, critically important, if you don't learn anything else tonight, mark from here to here, here to here, here to here, here to here. When I go over this with my gouge, if I get rid of all those lines, it's concentric again in this while it's being held on, how it's being held on this chuck. If I don't do this, I risk having a thin side and a thick side, because if I hollow and it's at this concentric position and this one's not, I'm going to have a thin side and a thick side. We talked about that a while back, and you've done a lot better. Well, I'm not pointing him out. It's hundreds of people I've talked to. What's wrong with my lathe? You know, well, it ain't the one I sold. You know, nothing's wrong with your lathe. So I'm going to do something. I'm going to, John Catches was kind enough to bring tool refs that I sold him. But I didn't have any for this size lathe. And this is the shear rest. And shear rest, I'm going to mount it low, position it very low. I kind of put it so that it's kind of parallel here, where this is. This gap between here is kind of parallel to that surface. And I'm going to, remember that cut that I used a while ago? Pushing it, I'm going to pull it. Same exact cut. I'm going to pull it. I don't see anybody doing this, and I don't know why. But what did we figure out, John? It's 30 degrees difference, or 40 or something. You can get the handle of the tool down 30 or 40 degrees lower than you can with, say, a comfort rest. What I didn't mention is it's not a bevel riding cut. And you want to stay in the middle 80% of the cutting edge. If you get out on the point, or if you get here, you'll dig a groove in the piece. If you're in the middle 80%, it will not. There's a little bit of line here. There's a little line here. These are gone. So I've got this quadrant right here is still out. So it proves that I needed to do this. but without a bevel lighting cut, it's significantly important that you put your pressure from your hands into the tool and then into the tool rest, not into the wood. If you're pushing into the wood, it's going to be a problem. So I rotate the gouge a little bit to the right to get in this little corner, and then I immediately roll it back up a little bit. But this is not a scraping cut. This is a actual cutting fibers cut. I don't know how to say that. And you'd like to make the traverse from this point to this point in one pull. I always found it very interesting that with the same grind on the same tool, you can get 5 or 6 distinctly different types of shavings. You know, you can scrape with it, you can do a low handle and get these little spirals. You can do the rough and cut like I was and go up to whatever the width this is, an inch, 3/4 of an inch. It's a multi-purpose tool. Now I've got a pretty good surface, and most importantly, it's back centered again. There's no visible lines left. Now, in the normal circumstance at home, I would now get burrs on my tools, and burrs is significantly important in order to make a scraper work. So then what I would do is I would keep this down very low, drop the tool handle down, start in the air, and have this tool at 45 degrees to the floor this way. Finger down, thumb here, push into the tool rest, start in the air, find the edge, and then advance slowly and go to about here, and you've lost your burr by that point. It's time to refresh. So the best option is to have another gouge, switch to a new gouge, start here, work your way in, find that surface, work to about here. Okay. Work to about here, change, come back, and work to here. Refresh the burrs on those 3 tools and do that process 3 times. And you'll have a really nice surface. And the purpose of this is that the length of this is slightly got a positive convex curve to it. But many of my tools today are flattening out more and more and more there. But what it's doing is it's flattening out taking out any irregularities, any minor tool marks or anything that you had left behind. And by scraping now, we close that tool in so the top edge is only about 1/8 of an inch from the wood, and the bottom edge is what's touching. You don't roll it up and make a cut. You want to roll it this way and make it scrape. So now we've turned this tool into a scraper. Questions?
What grade did you end up sanding initially after you've done that then? Are you, can you go to 220 right away then, or 320?
I'm sorry, what?
What sanding would you start with after that cut?
It depends on the wood and how much I want to brag. But I probably never, I seldom start with anything finer than 180. You know, I mean, why? You're just going to spend more time, you know, to go to 120, 180, something like that, and get it, and then go in, you know, up the line until you get to, I don't go beyond about 320 on anything. Because of my surfaces, I don't make shiny surfaces. I only use finishes that are not going to produce the Walmart shine. I just don't really like it. That's my personal preference, you know. Okay, so we got that. Switch back to the comfort rest. Thank you, John. That was nice. That really worked well. Okay. For the next operation, I want to, with the level tool handle, I want to be centered. Okay. So to hollow this is a simple process of holding the rotation of the tool at 45 degrees to the floor, starting here, ending here, starting here, ending here. If I try to start here, it's going to skip on me. Okay. So I'll show you. If I start this way, see it push the tool out, pushing it that way. If I start this way, it doesn't do that. Okay. And what I want to do is I want to scoop out a little bowl, and then I want to scoop out a bigger bowl. Don't force it. Let the tool cut. I'm used to standing at the end of the lathe to hollow. You get much better body movement. You get better tool control with the contraption that they've got down at the end of this wheel kit. Can't do it. Trying to see the edge. Remember I said the painted edge is what I want to see. The other thing is, as you're hollowing something like this, especially since we have an intermittent material coming around intermittently. There you go. I can kind of see through the bowl, like looking through the blades of a fan, and it helps me study the outside of the piece so I can follow that as a line, rather than putting my head in a box and trying to figure out where everything is. I'm not going to get stupid here. You want to go down in stages. So you start at the rim and work your way down a little ways. Make sure that it's in good shape. And then go another step and don't go back up. And another step and don't go back up. It's the hardest thing in the world not to go back up, especially if you see something wrong. But what will happen is the wings will reflect, they're already centrifugally coming out from where they were. You know, they're spreading. And so once you start hitting it, or it starts hitting the tool, they want to start doing this, if they're thin enough. And that's where you start seeing these lines in here. You can't go back. You just can't. All it does is get worse if it's doing that. And I've had bowls, I can't say what kind of material they were or how wet they were or whatever. And I had my tool rest about half an inch from the wood. And I turned the lathe up and it was fine until I got to high speed. And then started touching the tool rest, and I'm like, holy crap, it spread out a half an inch. So, and another thing that happened to me was I turned a large natural edge bowl to a very thin result, like a 1/16 of an inch. And when I stopped the lathe, I had a paper thin area here and a paper thin area here. And what had happened was that it had expanded, and as the wing areas expanded, it drew the valley areas in. It's like if you took a plastic jar and you started pulling it. Two parts of it, the opposite side here and opposite side here are going to suck together, and these are going to go out, and that's what happened. So what I did after that was I made a Saturn ring to go on a bowl. If I go really thin, I put a Saturn ring on there and hot glue it to it. It's made out of a thin material, maybe 1/4 inch plywood or something. And you hot glue it here, 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 and that gives it the stability that it needs not to vibrate and not to expand. So you're going to think about things like that. I haven't used it much, but it worked. So what I'm looking for now is consistent wall thickness. And I am consistent as can be right to here. I don't know if you can see that. But I'm not quite at the bottom of my valley yet. So I will try to take a little more out right here and see if I can get that to be even, and then we'll work out the middle. And people talk to me all the time about having trouble in the transition zone. And that transition is where the wall meets the floor or the bottom of the bowl. If you have a nice, open, true curve, there is no transition zone. Okay? If you have designed a bowl like this, and it comes down, yeah, it comes down to here, and it's got to turn to get to the middle, to the bottom. That's the transition zone. Avoid that by making a nice, wide, open hole. Go to 1.25 or 1.5, and you'll be in awful good shape. So here I would come in and I'd find the bevel. I'm still looking at the outside. I'm so proud of myself. Call one of my wives. Tell them how good I am. Boy, he was really great. Yeah, right. There you go. I don't think we get an agreement on that. It's pretty darn consistent. I'm gonna take off a little more. Let's do this real quick. My favorite gauge costs $3, if that. Today is probably 19, but yeah. Just for grins, I want to show you this gouge. This is micro bevel gouge. So there's a 70-degree micro bevel here. What I've been turning with is a 60-degree, and here's a 50-degree relief bevel. And the union between where these two bevels meet is much, much more obtuse than the heel of a 60-degree single bevel tool. And to me, that's the greatest benefit to it, is that this one will leave marks where this one was less likely to do that. The other thing is, at 70 degrees, it requires me to move the handle further away from me in order to engage the edge. Okay, if I was at 60, I'd be back here. And as I move further this way, it shortens the fulcrum between the support of the tool rest and the surface of the wood. And what does that do? Reduces vibration. So, and it also, in many cases, when you turn a bowl, you're trying to maintain bevel contact. Your 60 degree or whatever you're using gets way back here and starts hitting the rim before you get to the middle. Well, here we go. 70 degree is steeper, and it requires you to get further over this way, and that frees up so you're not going to hit the rim of the bowl as early as you would with the other ones. Questions about that? Now, people talk about, oh, a micro bevel. I hear this all the time. Oh, a micro bevel, you get through the transition zone. I was like, that's one of the benefits, but it's probably third in line for me. You know, one, I don't like to get into the transition zone to start with, but even if I did, I still think that this is the greatest benefit, is the difference between these two bevels is so obtuse compared to that. And then the other thing is getting the tool handle more perpendicular to the surface. So I'm going to take a little cut here. You might notice that throughout the evening, other than roughing, my left hand is not up on the tool rest. That my hand is back here. And the reason I do that is because I can get a more fluid movement of the tool if I'm not holding on, leaning on this as a crutch. And I'm sitting there going, There's a lot to being loose and balanced and fluid movement, and it comes down to a lot of things. But in the master's classes I've worked with Ellsworth on, done a few of those, and we actually have people laying on the floor going through relaxation exercises. He talks a lot about the how much tension you put in your arm by holding the tool too tightly. It tightens up the muscles in your forearm. I'm going to switch to the micro bevel tool. See the little wispy shavings now? Finish out to the center. I'm beginning to like that. This is a laser that I build. It's got a laser pointer here. It's got an adjustable screw here. Laser pointer is adjustable X and Y. It's on a rigid frame. There's a spirit level, a bubble level here, so I can look and see this is level. And I got a number 2 Morse taper in here that put it in here when I want. Usually what I'll do is a quick check. That laser, I've reduced the diameter of the aperture so that there's just a tiny pinpoint of laser here, so I can get a more accurate result. I put it up against the inside edge of the bottom and I level it. And you can see, remember I said I would like to be like right here. I'm up about an 1/8 of an inch or so this way. So I need to take a little more out. I find that tool absolutely invaluable to my process. Sliding the bevel on the surface, finding where there's a little rise, getting behind it, and then moving forward and taking it out. Right there. I don't know if y'all can see that on the camera or not. But I've got that bubble level absolutely level, and I'm saying that's the point. Alternatively, I could take this and slide it up, get my hands free where I can mark it, but I know where I'm at when I'm right there at that corner. Usually what I do is I go, okay, well, that's the mark. Whatever this thickness is, I need to move this way. And then whatever I want for a foot, I said, that's the line. I can take everything else off. Okay? That is an indispensable tool. We can just have a good time. Now I got plenty of time. That never happens to me. Thank you. Thank y'all for getting me up here soon in the program. Okay, so we have, we know where we're at here. We can add this. We can say, well, we want a foot. It's going to be maybe right at the ends of the jaws or just inside of here will be the bottom of the foot. So when I turn it around, I can take everything this side of that line and take it off. And I'll still have room to make my foot. Okay, let me see what I want to do here. I'm glad I know where the button is now. I feel like I learned something. All right, beginners and on up. When you take a chuck off of the lathe, don't just unscrew it. Because when it comes off, it's going to want to fall. You're going to mash your fingers. You're going to drop it on your toe. Who knows what's going to happen. What I do is I recommend holding it securely on the bottom, unscrewing this way. And we have Saturday sawdust sessions over in Gainesville quite a bit. And I was working with one of the new turners, and they grabbed it and started doing this, and it was a big, heavy chuck. And I was like, stop. What? I told her, I said, this thing's going to fall and land right on your foot. And so just a little tip. Okay, so I've got this. This looks nice and centered. You know, I was real happy with that. I wasn't sure what we were going to get. This is my jam chuck and my vacuum chuck and a stand that I use for inverting natural edge bowls or other bowls. I make this recentering system. So this is an appliance that goes in the threads and has a hardened drill bushing in the center. I had the, there it is. Okay. If anybody's got one of these that they got from me, you might want to build yourself a 1/4 inch gauge. I'll be close. And this little gauge, what it does is goes in between here. You set the drill stop using the 1/4 inch gap, gauge. And you want to make sure this is tight so you don't just drill a hole down through your bowl. Come on. So you know what I just did was make a reference where the center is based on the way it's held on the chuck. And then I use that center to center it up on the jam chuck. You ever have any trouble when you put it on the jam chuck getting it centered up? And it's like, oh. I used to go through that over and over and over again, and then I woke up one night and said, I can fix that. Didn't go quite deep enough for my satisfaction. But I have a hole started, so this will work. Yeah, that'll work. Okay, we're going to use the jam chuck. Take it off there, put it on here. Come on. Shouldn't have been any trouble to do that. Now I'm going to use this is a one-way or work with the robust as well, but there's a pin that goes in here. It's the same diameter as that hole. I find it's best to put it on the pin. Bring it in. I'm centered. Okay. I'm going to accept whatever it gives me at this point. I really don't have a choice anyway, but it should be well centered. Usually on a jam chuck, I'll slow it down some and start it up again. So the jam chuck, what it's doing is I've got a piece of foam on it. It's called Silly Winks. You can get from like Hobby Lobby and places like that. And I also use it for vacuum chucking. But it's got an adhesive back on it. It's real thin. But and if you get it white, it doesn't leave a mark on the wood. And I've got it on all my jam chucks and vacuum chucks now. So I got to take some waste stock off here. And I know I can take quite a bit off of this tenon. You see what I did there? I went, took it off, and then I got on the bevel on this previously turned surface and started a push cut. And as I push cut, I bring the handle around and around and around. If I don't bring the handle around, it's not going to work. It's always a good idea to check. I hit it. I like that. Sometimes you'll find it stops there, so you got to do a lot more work. The other little tip on that is if you have where it goes from the new surface to the old surface, and this has worked a little bit, you can't sit there and run your gouge out there on the old surface and start going chunk, 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 chunk. You know, God, screwed everything up. So what you do instead is you get in position, have a burr on your tool, turn the speed way down, and one hand, not two hands. Don't put it against your body, and probably turn it down a little bit even more than that. And the reason we're going very, very slowly, we're using this tool as a scraper. You can see the little bit of stuff we're getting off. We're using it as a scraper. And when it reaches the other surface, it's not the same level, or it has a warp to it or whatever, it's going to ride it like a warp record. If it's going too fast, it skips over the high spots. You have to do that until you get a surface you like. You're still going to be able to sand this and get it improved even more. So now we'll come in and do the final cut, and that is to make a foot. I'm using the convex bevel 3/8" gouge, spindle gouge. I didn't mention to you, but when I begin, I'll get to the process of hollowing the bowl out. And if it's a smooth edge bowl versus a natural edge bowl, if you don't have that tool handle way over the bed, you can follow what I'm trying to say, then it can skip and blow the edge out. But on a natural edge bowl, because there's not a lot of material there coming by, it won't skip. So if you're right at the edge, get your handle way over like this, enter in. Well, on a smooth edge bowl, enter in. On a natural edge bowl, I can go into the finishing cut and go in at the edge with the flute straight up, and it doesn't skip. There's just not enough wood there to pull it over. Here they're all going, he's going to mess it up. Right there. I was looking over for the off button. There you go. I turned another bowl. Yay! But it gives you, you know, hopefully there were some things in there that y'all got something out of.
I did have one question while you had a tenon and then a step, right? But just now you got rid of all of that?
Because I needed to make that line project. The outside of the board, they think it formed as line.
Okay.
And watch that line and see where it's going. And you gotta have that space in order to get there.
Okay.
And it elevates, when you elevate it, if you look at, natural edge fall, you look at a hollow form, you look at large, it's like, this is flattened out. And, that's probably because they didn't have a base step. That if you, because this is probably dictated by the diameter of the jaws. Whereas on this, it eliminates that. Like going past that example around here.
Yeah, I
But you can see
know.
where
Yeah,
the
I saw
line,
that.
where the line goes.
Right.
Here, with the foot. That was my intention.
Basically this time of year. Yeah.
Okay.
But you gotta kind of learn that curve and what's gonna go in where you still have something left.
Don't you have that drawing on your website?
What?
Don't you have that drawing with the base step on your website so people can see? I understand what that's doing, but sometimes it's easier to see when it's a line drawing. I thought you had it on your website.
Probably, I got a lot of stuff on there. I've been, oh, and I'm gonna do 4 demos at the Florida Symposium, and a lot of these subjects will be covered, these points will be covered. You know,
Might have had this slide.
and it'd be nice for you to go there. Mark was instrumental, I'm sure, getting me in there. I don't know what kissing or shunning. But anyway, thank you all very much.
All right, challenge. Expect to see something like this next month from everybody, right?
Thank you.
Well,